Good morning. Let's get this show on the road. Coming to you live from beautiful. Shut up. A little better find evil computer. It says my connection is unstable. I'm using the best connection I have. The hotspot off my tablet. Okay, so I don't know where stupid connection cut me off. I'm better, not necessarily well health wise, a little better financially, not wealthy, but able to pay my bills. I got most of the books mailed off that I promised to people, including Australia. They finally sent that guy his book, the post office. Oh, yeah, Jason's in mountains too, Colorado. I'm in California mountains. Last night, the power went off briefly, and it was not only in the mountains here, it was also down the hill in Redlands, a large city or community or whatever in San Bernardino. It made the news. And of course, it did that as soon as everybody got all their digital clocks set for the daylight saving time change. Oh, yeah, I've been hearing horror stories about rents in Phoenix. My God. And having been in Phoenix in June, I can tell you that you would have to pay me to live there. Even Las Vegas is bearable, not to mention the casinos. But Phoenix in summer? Oh, no, never again. Thank God I was only visiting. I do love these mountains. They don't get as hot as the valleys. Of course, they get very, very cold, but I can stay inside. I can wear a coat, cuddle with the kitty cat. Yes, kitty. Hi, Tora. Did you come to say hi to your adoring fans? There you go. There she is. Say hello. Say good morning. Silly kitty. Ah. She comes up to me and with one paw taps my leg when she wants my attention. She said hi to you guys, so she needs her treat. Okay. Anyway, I don't have air conditioning. Most of the time we don't need it. But when it gets to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, feel too warm. I'll actually wear shorts and tank tops. We had some cold snaps back adjusted. Why is my connection unstable? Well, here in these mountains, which are like $1,000 a month. Oh, and no pets allowed. Yeah. Not Come on. Okay, spot. Brief power outage last night. The internet has been terrible. Let's see if I can switch. Ever since that, oh, come on. Ever since that weird power outage, quite unstable. Cost to live in Los Angeles. People actually, 3 people will rent a room and take turns sleeping in it. San Francisco has always been outrageous. I think maybe this will be stable. This connection, we'll see. I wanted to get into Hamlet's Mill. Gigantic book. I forgot to set up the Hamlet's Mill by Santillana and Foundation. I don't know why we don't say De Santillana. I wrote it in the description. An essay investigating the origins of human knowledge and its transmission through myth. Is this the bookmark? I think it is. Oh, yes, it is. One of my inheritances from Mom's parents, my grandparents. It's a Masonic bookmark. It has the square and compass. It says, "Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Let there be light." And it refers to 3 Bible verses, Psalm 133, Amos 7, that's one people rarely look at, and Ecclesiastes 12. Interesting. Yeah, my mom's father was a Mason, and he and my granny were in White Shrine. They're the Shriners who run those hospitals for children. I must have chosen the wrong Masons. They were neither wealthy nor powerful. All right, getting through the preface, introduction, and other stuff in the front of the book. These highly respected scholars and this practically worshipped book cover mythology from all over the, let's say, the European circle, which of course includes the Middle East and North Africa. And they begin in chapter 1, the chronicler's tale, with a quote from the Orphic hymns. Doesn't say which one. Makes it kind of hard to look it up. "You of changeful counsel, undefiled Titan of exceeding strength, you who consume all and increase it again, You who hold the indestructible bond by the unlimited order of the Aeon, Aeon, wily minded originator of generation, you of crooked counsel. And for some reason, they choose to start with Shakespeare. The proper gate through which to enter the realm of pre Shakespearean Hamlet is the artless account given by Saxo Grammaticus, 1150 to 1216. Well, circa 1150 to circa 1216. That means approximately. In books 3 and 4 of his Justa Danorum, it's a book about the Danes. What follows is the relevant part of book 3 in Elton's translation, only slightly shortened. And it has a humongous quote. Humongous. It goes on for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. I ain't reading 6 pages of a quote from a translation of a medieval text. Sorry. But here, our authors introduce it by saying, the story begins with the fears of Orvendel, Amlethus's father, especially his victory over King Cole of Norway, which drove Orvendel's brother Fengo, stung with jealousy, to murder him. Quote, then he took the wife of the brother he had butchered, capping unnatural murder with incest. And that's in an ancient Danish tale, which might have been the inspiration for Shakespeare's Hamlet. So old Shakespeare did not pull things out of the air. Writers seldom do. In fact, if you read Boccaccio's Decameron and Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, as I was forced to do in college, I enjoyed it, but it was required reading. They tell many of the same stories, and that was okay back then. The thing was, what readers looked for was not whether your idea was original, but how well you told the story. I guess I have to mute the phone, but I hope I remember to turn the volume back up when I'm done here. Morning, Witta. I got Jason and Witta in the chat room. Oh, come on, mouse. Get in the box. Okay. I'm afraid I have to leave you for a minute to recycle some coffee. Sorry about that. I thought I'd taken care of that before I got on the computer. I'll be back. Don't go away. Oh, dum-de-dum. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. I'm coming. Dum-de-dum, dum-de-dum-de-dum. Okay, I think I'm back. Sorry about that. It's morning in the mountains. Our weather is mild, neither freezing nor roasting. Highs around 60 degrees. It's nice. Okay, so I'm going to turn back past all this stuff to the end of chapter 1. Where they quote from a story, a different story. Snorri Sturluson, the learned poet of Ireland, 1178 to 1241, in his Skaldskaparmal, the language of the bards, explains many kenningar of famous bards of the past. He quotes a verse from the Snæbjörn, an Icelandic skald who had lived long before. This kenning is like knowing, knowledge, wisdom. Let me get this going. This kenning has been the despair of translators, as is the case in any very ancient, partly lost poetic language. There are no less than 3 terms in the 9 lines that can be considered hapax legomena. I love that phrase, and I've never been able to use it before. That is, terms which occur only once. The most authoritative translation is that of Gollancz. I know of Gollancz as a British publisher, but I guess there must be a scholar named Gollancz. When a word appears only once in all of the texts that you have in a written language, it's difficult to know what it means because you have nothing to compare. It's difficult to find the context. And here is the translation of the kenning from the ancient Icelandic poet. "'Tis said," sang Snæbjörn, "that far out off yonder ness," like, I don't know what ness means. This is Old English. I think of Loch Ness. Loch is lake. I'm not sure what ness is. "The 9 maids of the island mill stir amain the host cruel scary quern. They who in ages past ground Hamlet's meal. The good chieftain furrows the hole's lair with his ship's beaked prow. Here the sea is called Amlodi's mill." That is enough, say the authors of this book. Whatever the obscurities and ambiguities, one thing is clear. Goodbye to Junius Brutus and the safe playgrounds of classical derivations. So that's their support for their conjectures about Hamlet's Mill, the title of their book. Hang on a sec. Dum-de-dum. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Dum-de-dum. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. The problem with nice weather is tons of pollen. Tree pollen, grass pollen, flower pollen. Okay, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, when I was planning to look at Hamlet's Mill, these authors, Santillana and Dechend, claim that the myths about the Milky Way, that band of billions of stars that stretches like a belt across the sky, is the salt pouring from the mill. Now let's see. The problem with this quote talking about Hamlet's meal, M-E-A-L, his grain, is that this was written in the 1200s. Shakespeare wrote Hamlet when? 1600s. Who was Hamlet to the people of the 1200s? Well, he was a Dane. I would like to explore that. Well, let's go on to the end of chapter 1. This deals with the gray, stormy ocean of the north, its huge breakers grinding forever the granite skerries, and Amlodi is its king. The quern has not vanished from our language, quern or quern, Quern. It is still the surf mill. Even the British Island pilot, in its factual prose, conveys something of the power of the 9 maids, whose very name is echoed in the Merry Men of May on Pentland Firth. And they quote something, it isn't clear to me what they're quoting. Oh, they're quoting the British Island pilot. Okay. When an ordinary gale has been blowing for many days, the whole force of the Atlantic is beating against the shores of the Orkneys. Rocks of many tons in weight are lifted from their beds, and the roar of the surge may be heard for 20 miles. The breakers rise to the height of 60 feet. End of the block quote. Now, as the storm heightens, quote, all distinction between air and water is lost. Everything seems enveloped in a thick smoke, end quote. Pythias, the first explorer of the North, called it the sea lung. Oh, like your lungs, breathing. And concluded, that this must be the end of the earth, where sky and water rejoin each other in the original chaos. This introduces a much more ancient and certainly independent tradition. I'm seeing the word I expect instead of the word that's there. Certainly independent tradition, whose sources are in early Norse myth, or at least run through it from a still more ancient lineage. Now, I don't care. I'm looking up quern. That word sounds so familiar, but Quern. A simple hand mill for grinding grain, typically consisting of two circular stones, the upper of which is rotated or rubbed to and fro on the lower one. I could have sworn there was something in typography called a quern. I guess not. Okay. I hope I'm not boring you guys. I hope you're awake. Chapter 2 goes through Finland. Well, let's see. Let's find something really interesting in this book. It's humongous, by the way. It's how many pages? Something like. Oh, the index doesn't have page numbers. Okay, and the bibliography doesn't have page numbers. Evil things. It's been years since I've looked at this. I don't like people who don't number their pages. Here we go. Oh, Lord. There are some page numbers. They hid them. It's something like 500 pages, and the type is rather small. Okay. Chapter 12, Socrates' Last Tale. Come on. Getting close. I like Socrates. He went around asking questions. So they killed him. They called him a heretic for asking questions about the God. We are not allowed to question the gods. Boy, what a morning. Well, at least this internet connection seems to be holding. Okay, Witta isn't bored. Just image searching quern to see what it looks like. Good idea. Okay, they begin chapter 12 with a quote from Dante's Paradiso, the paradise section of the Divine Comedy. Oh dear, it's in Italian. Al suo sepetto tal dentro mi fe, qual si fe glauco nel gustar dell'erba, che il fe consorto in mar degli altri dei. Well, I think it talks about the white foam and the sea of another god. I'm not sure. I don't really know Italian. And of course, these highfalutin scholars wouldn't think of translating it for us. They're showing off. Socrates didn't speak Italian anyway, he was Greek. Hmm. Okay, let's see what they say about Socrates. My cigarette keeps going out. That's no fun. What a man has to say in the last hours of his life deserves attention, most especially if that man be Socrates, awaiting execution in his jail and conversing with Pythagorean friends. He has already left the world behind, has made his philosophical will, and is now quietly communing with his own truth. No comment. This is the close of the Phaedo, Phaedo. Uh, their notation of dates is weird. Around 107 to 115, those are lines, I guess, because it's written as a poem. And it is expressed in the form of a myth. Strangely enough, innumerable commentators have not taken the trouble to scrutinize it and have been content to extract from it some pious generalities about the rewards of the soul. Yet it is a thoughtful and elaborate statement attributed to an authority whom Socrates, or Plato, because Plato wrote Socrates' story, Socrates didn't write, prefer not to name. So whether Socrates or Plato were quoting someone, they didn't choose to name the source of their great philosophy. It is clothed in a strange physical garb. It is worth accepting Plato's suggestion to take it with due attention. Socrates is quietly moving into the other world. He is a denizen of it already, and his words stand, as it were, for a rite of passage. And here they quote the Phaedo, where Socrates is about to take the hemlock, or maybe he's already drunk it, and surrounded by his disciples, he gives them one last tale to tell. Socrates was given the option of exile, but in that time and place, exile just meant drawing out your death over a long period of time. Travelers were subject to all kinds of hardship. And yet that's where we get the tradition of hospitality. If someone who was traveling down the road, usually on foot, but maybe on some kind of donkey or horse or wagon, if they knocked on your door, you were obligated to give them a meal and perhaps a bed for the night. Hi, Oswald. Good to see you here. Let me type that. Whoop, whoop, whoop. W-A-L-D. Wald. So here's the quote from, I hate the way they do this. So this chapter is a huge long pages and pages, about 6 pages from, I guess, from Plato's Phaedo. The story goes that when a man dies, his garden deity, to whose lot it fell to watch over the man while he was alive, undertakes to conduct him to some place where those who gather must submit their cases to judgment before journeying to the other world, and this they do with the guide to whom the task has been assigned of taking them there. Kind of like, oh, come on, brain. I've forgotten Virgil. Sorry about that. I breathed in something. Dante's guide, Virgil, taking him through hell to purgatory to paradise. This is not a Christian myth. It is not even a Jewish myth. It's pagan. When I die, I don't expect to enter the other world, to go to heaven and live there forever, sit on a cloud playing a harp. God promised us a new earth. Beware jealousy, the green-eyed monster. I don't know which play it's from, but probably not Hamlet. Yeah, Othello, Witta says that's much more likely. Iago is jealous of Othello for having such a beautiful wife. That's one of the earliest criticisms of racism, by the way, Shakespeare's Othello. Othello is a black man. And that's one of the reasons why Iago hates him, because Othello is his boss. Yeah, well, there are some things in Shakespeare I don't care for. But when I was in high school and rather depressed, I read Hamlet several times. I like Macbeth with the 3 witches. Double, double, toil and trouble, cauldron boil and cauldron bubble. I probably messed up the quote, but it's something like that. Anyway, so back to the quote. When they have there met with their appropriate fates and waited the appropriate time, another guide brings them back here again after many long cycles of time. So that's what? Reincarnation. Oh, there's all kinds of stuff about Shakespeare. They say that the actor named William Shakespeare was illiterate and blah, blah, blah. He kept spelling his name different ways and so forth. take it all with a grain of salt. It might have been a pen name for someone else. There might have been a committee writing his plays. But I don't care. And I do like his sonnets. Shakespeare wrote some really wonderful poetry, whoever he was. The journey, then, is not as Aeschylus as Telephus describes it. Aeschylus, Greek playwright. His character Telephus says, let's see, he says that a single track leads to the other world, but I don't think that it is single or one at all. That's Socrates talking, supposedly, through the writing of Plato. Anyway, I kind of consider it lazy to fill a 500-page book with all these long, 6 pages long, single-spaced quotes from other people's work. The task of the scholar is to distill the source down to the important parts of it. Yes, you need the context, but you don't need every single word for page after page. It's irritating. And Witta says, I think Shakespeare's plays rely more on how the actors and actresses are. You thought The Taming of the Shrew was hilarious, but the version you saw was John Cleese. Well, there was a movie with Burton and Taylor, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, based on The Taming of the Shrew. It was called Kiss Me, Kate. Wonderful, delightful. Part of the problem modern audiences have with Shakespeare is that the language is old. It's Renaissance English, late early 1600s. To the people of that time, it was just the way people talked. To us, it sounds highfalutin and stilted and hard to understand. Like, what in the world is a bodkin? Well, it's the knife that kills Hamlet because it has poison dipped on it, but any knife is a bodkin. Oh, be distracted, Witta. I'm distracted. Anyway, I did promise to look at this book, but now I remember why I never finished reading it. If I wanted to read the whole book by Plato, I could look it up. I don't need it reprinted in their book, which serves to boost the price of their book so they make more money because it has more pages. That's called padding. Many of the things they quote word for word can be summarized in their own words. Well, Macbeth is quite an interesting story. There really was a guy named Macbeth, an historic person, but I think Shakespeare's play kind of slanders him. If I remember correctly, he died in battle against a rival king. Hmm. Oh, and historians are um, more and more often coming to the conclusion that Richard III of England was slandered. Apparently, he really was a good king. He was brave and he had good reason to take over the throne from his nephews. There's good historical evidence that Richard's older brother Edward was born on the wrong. Well, let's see. I can say that. Not really in the royal line that he was. That their mother had an affair with a cavalry officer in France, where the English were at war. They were always at war with France, and so was not the king's son. He was the bastard, which meant your father was not your father. And then Richard, who not Richard, Henry. Richard III was attacked by Henry, who had an even more tenuous, thin claim to the throne of England. You know, it was the Yorks and the what you call it, the War of the Roses, Warses of the Roses. Why am I blanking? Google is my friend. Lancaster. Frankly, I don't understand why one has a birthright to being a monarch, a king, a queen. That is so elitist. When they told George Washington he could be king of the United States, he turned them down. And after 2 terms as president, he stepped down. Now, I have nothing personally against Elizabeth II, but isn't it obvious that they're breeding back the way they do with horses when a purebred line of horses gets too many genetic defects? They breed them back to a mutt. Same with purebred dogs. To eliminate the genetic defects by crossing your purebred sickly line with someone who's healthy. Let's see. Yeah, the stinking clocks. Leave my clocks alone. If you want to get up earlier in the summer, just get up earlier. Leave the clocks alone. Yeah, Shakespeare could have used daylight saving time. And now it's the same time in California as in Arizona because they don't change their clocks. Okay, Witta liked Titus with Anthony Hopkins. And The Tempest with Russell Brand. Oh, Russell Brand, people underrate his acting ability, but he's primarily a stand up comedian. And Helen Mirren, Royal Shakespearean. I had to approve a post in chat. Lancaster, if you're in the States. Oswald says Lancaster is really Lancaster. Don't even want to know how many pronunciations the Brits have. Well, the documentaries always call them Lancaster. Charles II of Spain is a good example of inbreeding. One of the Spanish kings, one of the Ferdinands, I think, had a lisp. He also had a hare lip. They were actually Austrian. They were Habsburgs. The reason the Spanish started lisping so that an S became a sh, was because the king lisped. And rather than have the king think they were making fun of him, they all started lisping so his speech would seem normal. The Austrian Habsburg royals were really inbred, and they sent their, younger children who didn't inherit their throne all over Europe to rule other countries. Well, I think northern Arizona has a good climate and some mountains, but it is rather expensive to live in the nice parts. I muted the phone, but it still has a loud anyway. Like I would love to live in northern Nevada, somewhere near north of Reno. It's way too expensive. It's cheap down in the desert part. Southern Oregon isn't too bad, and they have no sales tax, but their state income tax is kind of high. So Californians tend to retire in Oregon because you don't pay income taxes on your pension. At least not to the state. The federal government's trying to get as much as they can squeeze out of us. No culture? Oh my. Witta describes the autopsy of Charles II of Spain. Well, I don't know how it is in Oregon, Oswald, with cigarette taxes, but in California, for a name brand and not one of those cheap brands of cigarettes that I wouldn't smoke if I were stuck on a desert island, for the actual decent cigarettes, it's about $10 a pack. When I started smoking in the 70s, it was 25 cents a pack. And if you bought a whole carton, it came to 20 cents a pack. $2 for 10 packs. At least the mask mandate is over. Well, except at doctors' offices and hospitals. They make you wear a mask. They point that thing at your forehead to get your temperature. And they ask you, do you have symptoms of COVID? Have you been exposed to COVID? And now, I think this is a California thing, but it might be federal. They have to ask you what gender you identify with and whether it's the same gender you were born with, and which pronouns you prefer. Who cares? I'm sick. Heal me. Oh, wow. Yeah, I've got to get one of those machines to make my own cigarettes, not only to save money, but also because it won't have all those stinking additives. Well, anyway, Hamlet's Mill proposes that the ancient myths about the Milky Way, that fuzzy band of billions of stars that's like a belt across the night sky, was really the salt from Hamlet's mill. The gods were grinding salt or grain, usually salt because the stars are so white. Okay, who cares? But it's a highly respected and even worshipped book that I just can't read because I'm annoyed. It reminds me of the book that I had the dubious pleasure of copy editing for Robert Eisenman, a biblical scholar at the University of California at Long Beach, who happens to be an atheist. I agree with his analysis that the real founder of Christianity was James, the brother of Jesus, and not the Apostle Paul. But his book, which was a assigned textbook that all his students had to buy, had page after page. At least he wrote it himself, but it'll be 3 pages or more from chapter 3, quoted in chapter 10 and again in chapter 12 and again in chapter 15. Padding, making the book thicker so it costs more and you make more money. Sorry, that light is bugging me and washing out the picture on my screen. What a morning. Too much tree pollen in the air. Let's turn on the humidifier. That might help. Why is it off? Let's turn on the other one. It's over here. Come on. There we go. One at each end of the room. I'm not ill. Well, at least my throat isn't. It's just pollen and dust and cat hair. Ugh. Well, yeah. Forget Hamlet's Mill. I don't like Hamlet's Mill. Um, Looking at my books. Let's look at if I can pull them out without the mountain falling down. Okay. Let's turn the light back on. Stargazer by Miguel Connor, who has a YouTube channel, Eon Byte, AEON BYTE. He's a Gnostic. Stargazer is the story of a world ruled by vampires, and humans are kept like cattle. And one of the vampires has empathy for the humans. And here it's told in the first person. All I had wanted was a drink. That's it. Some nourishment and off to satisfy the mind next. A drink and I would have left. I never knew that would be the most important drink of my existence. I was starving after waking up. What else was new? I always thought moratoria lasted too long this time of year, with summer ebbing. After dressing, I left my cupola and took the shaft in normal form up to the citadel. The walkways and tunnels were already filling with stargazers, trying to get started on the nightly rigors of existence. I had my rigors, but a stop at Lilac's bar was my first chore. I was hungry, and a certain loneliness had settled on my shoulders like old dust. The bar had just opened. The sound of humming vacuum cleaners devouring mildew interrupted the fresh sizzle of igniting television and registers, all unnoticed by scurrying barbacks carrying glass racks and clean napkins. Good evening, Tina, my regular bartender said. Oh, good evening, end quote. Tina, my regular bartender said, as I nestled on a bar stool. Hard moratoria, Byron? You look wasted. I snorted and fingered my pockets for a cigarette, a rare habit for stargazers and usually frowned upon by the elders. I keep having odd dreams, I said, while Tina slid a square ashtray in front of me. Keep dreaming. I see Saul. Can you believe it? He keeps dreaming that he's seeing the sun. Oh, Oswald saw Miguel's stream on animism. Excellent. Okay, he's a vampire. He dreams about seeing the sun, but he can only come out at night. Excellent novel, Stargazer. The sequel is called Heretic, and I can also recommend Heretic, but you start with Stargazer. Excellent books. I'm impressed. If you've ever read Interview with the Vampire, Stargazer is better. And it touches upon the human condition, empathy, ethics, etc. Oh, et sequentia, you missed my scathing review of Hamlet's Mill. Okay, let's see. I've been on for an hour. Tora said hi to her adoring fans. I complained about changing the clocks and the power outage last night. It was brief, but it messed up everybody's digital clocks, so they had to set them again. I don't have that problem. All my clocks are either battery powered or these devices that reset themselves for daylight saving. Oh, and last week I was a guest on a Solaris Blue Ravens show. Um, Darn if I can remember. It's morning. My brain doesn't start to work till 4 p.m. Uh, I've lost it. I've totally lost it. Let me see. Um, oh, oh, okay. Um, Humph. How weird. Oh, how weird. Okay. Um, I'm not getting the title of the show. Humph. Well, anyway, check her out on Facebook. Solaris Blue Raven. There's her name in the chat room. I think it's Solaris. Solaris, same spelling, is Stanislav Lem's famous novel that was made into a movie. I think she pronounces it Solaris. Anyway, if you spend enough time searching around the internet, you'll find I've been interviewed. Oh, I was on Clyde Lewis's other show, not Ground Zero, the other one, a couple weeks ago. So that's my third interview with him, spread out over a decade. Um, I know it's on YouTube. Two movies at least from Solaris. Okay. I I don't know. I never saw the movie and I never read the book. Uh, I had the impression that the movie was rather pornographic of Solaris. Hmm, I'm kind of empty. Oh, I did get a bunch of trash hauled away. I'll have more. I'm beginning to clean up the yard. We've had storms that damage things and winds that blow in all kinds of stuff that I don't know where it came from, but it landed in my garden and it stayed there. Junk food that I never eat. Even beer cans. Someone had to toss beer cans. I don't think the wind picked them up even when they were empty. Oh well, they're aluminum. I get, 5 or 10 cents each when I recycle them. But it's the annual ritual of repacking things in new boxes and getting rid of the old, basically destroyed cardboard boxes that got wet. Or we have critters, in particular raccoons. They will get into everything and tear apart bags and boxes to see what's in them in case they want to eat it. Anyway, I'm worn out, but I got all my aluminum sorted into one bag and all my plastic sorted into another bag, so I can take all those things to the recycle center. And I have quite a few glass containers that are also California CRV, which means I paid a deposit on those bottles and I want it back. And I had to go buy more trash bags to pack up the oak leaves that have fallen all over the place. Oh, wow. It's spring. Well, it isn't officially spring, but the weather is here. My lilies and irises have begun to grow. They aren't blooming yet, but they'll get there. So I need to remove the top layer of oak leaves. They do need some organic matter on the ground to keep the moisture in and protect them from extreme temperatures, to protect the roots. But they don't need quite the amount of oak leaves that have fallen. And then the annual weed pulling begins. I pull the grassy weeds up by the roots because they don't grow back as fast. If you just use a weed whacker, yeah, you have to do it again and again and again. Although I've had to resort to the weed whacker every year because I just don't get enough weeds pulled before they start to make seeds. We don't want weed seeds all over. Wow. So there have been 2 movies of Solaris. Oh well. When are they going to make a movie from my book? Any of my books. I don't care which one. I could pay off my mortgage and maybe travel and see. I have apparently fans, or at least readers, all over the world. Nigeria, Korea, Japan, Spain, France, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, Brazil? I mean everywhere except possibly not Antarctica. That's one of my pet peeves. These people who are paid to talk on the air, they call it Antarctica. It's Antarctica. I don't care if you're just someone talking, but when you're paid to talk and you're recorded for posterity, you ought to get it right. Or at least try to. But my biggest pet peeve there, of course, is omni. And sometimes it's ominu. It's usually omni. And that is supposed to mean I am going to. Where'd they get that? Honestly. Oh well. I'm amazed. Yeah, I don't seem to have a great following in the English speaking countries. Oh, Italy too. One of my books is available in Italian translation. Mi Vida con Philip K. Dick. I think that's what it's called. My Life with Philip K. Dick. It's translated from Philip K. Dick, Remembering Firebright. I'm not sure. That looks like 8. 8 am I head out? I'm a head out. Well, it should be all right. So, 8? 8? 8? I'm a head out, yeah. Well, at least it's close. Where do you get ominu or omini? Really? Oh well, I can't understand Cockney slang, Cockney rhyming slang either. I think they don't want us to understand. Oh well. Oh, loose and lose. I notice that more often in writing, in the written words. And two is legitimately confusing, so I do two, Too, has, uh, oops, too many O's to be a silly little two, T-O. Come on. There, here. That's something that third grade teachers could use to help their students. But really, even college students have a little trouble with it. Tora, I gave you treats. Are you going to say hi to your adoring fans again? That's the price. Say hi. Oh, gosh, you're heavy. You're a big girl, aren't you? Oh, oh, you're so big. Ah, I can barely pick her up. And when she isn't helping, I can't pick her up. Isn't that right, Tora? There you go, right here. Oh, cats. Sweetie is getting less terrified of me. I've only had her for 14 years, and she still thinks I'm a cat murderer. Oh, Dune. Well, my flawed novel, Fallen Angels, would make an epic. Our cousins from the colonies take refuge on Earth, which is their prison planet, because they're at war with an alien race from the outer solar system. I think that would make an epic novel. Now, I liked one of the Dune movies better than the other. I think it might have been made 3 times now, but I've seen only 2. I liked the one with Kyle, what's his name from Twin Peaks? Yes, proper science fiction. In fact, Ray Nelson gave me a blurb for the back cover of Fallen Angels. He says this is real science fiction. Ray Nelson, of course, was Phil's co-author of the Ganymede Takeover. Oh, an editor for, I don't know, I think it might have been Ace Books. I'm not sure which publisher. Kyle MacLachlan. Well, I don't know whether you spelled it right either at Sequentia. But yeah, the David Lynch version. That was good. There was another one by somebody else, and it was okay, but not quite. I think David Lynch actually saw that by the end, the prophet, I forgot the character's name again, the Kyle MacLachlan character, the prophet leading the people to rebel against tyranny. By the end, he is no longer a good guy. He's a bad guy, an evil drug addict, drunk on power and drugs. I can't eat while talking. I'll gross you out. I have a lemon cookie. Every year I buy 1 pack of the lemonades from the Girl Scouts. Terribly bad for my health, but they're tasty. Oh, they're so good. And I was a Girl Scout, so technically I am a Girl Scout. Once a Scout, always a Scout. And they seem to have forgotten that their motto is, same as Boy Scouts, be prepared. But they can recite the whole Girl Scout pledge, which I can no longer do. We pledge to be helpful and all that stuff. And honest and good and so on. Yeah. Phil made me read Dune. He bought the paperback and gave it to me to read. Huge, thick book. Took forever, but I'm glad I read it. It's one of those books. I did that with Atlas Shrugged, too, and The Exorcist. Every time I read a page, I had to tear it out, because if I lost my place, I would never find it again. And The Exorcist, oh, that was a horrible book. It deserved to be torn to shreds. It was so scary and demonic. Let's see, there was a Dune mini-series. from 20 years ago. And Et Sequentia says, most ridiculous costumes I've ever seen. High school production level. Okay. Well, when I was at Chapman College as a student, before they sold out and became a university, and now it's all about the money instead of teaching. But back then, we had really cheesy costumes because the college was poor and many of the students were poor. But we had some amazing actors and dancers and musicians. Amazing. And it is as Tom, what's his name, said. Tom, you can't go home. Wolfe, Thomas Wolfe. Because it isn't there anymore. The town where I grew up till the age of 11, Culver City, kind of nestled between Venice and Los Angeles. It is not the same. Anaheim, where I spent my high school years, not the same. I was walking distance from Disneyland, and at that time, uh, if you were under 17 years old or younger, you could get into the park for $2 or $3. Of course, then you had to buy tickets for the rides. But my friend Sandy Nelson and I spent many afternoons walking around Disneyland. And people would give us their lesser value tickets. They only wanted the e-ticket rides. So we got to go on all the things like the Monsanto microscope and Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, stuff like that. And here and there I had some tickets that my brother gave me because he hadn't used them. Let's see. Well, you dressed the villain like a band leader. Okay, that's funny. Well, Chapman College produced my movie. It was called Connection. And it was about a future drug gang, more than a gang, an organization. And they put the leader of the gang out of commission by telling all the computers in the system that he was dead. And all his followers quit following him because he didn't exist anymore, even though he was sitting right there talking to them. And that sort of thing is kind of happening now. People suddenly don't get their Social Security check anymore because some glitch in the system said they died. And even standing right there in person, they can't convince a judge that they aren't dead. Anyway, yeah, our costumes were kind of silly, but the leader of the evil organization was dressed kind of like a bishop, not a band leader. And it centered also in the sort of side plot related but not not the main plot, was a water war between Orange County and Riverside County in Southern California. Well, you can't find Connection. I have it on videotape, but the college lost it. We didn't have computers then. We didn't. I suppose I should try to get it digitized and put on YouTube or something. But it's a rough cut. We never did the background music, so it's kind of weird watching it because of the sound. Oh, hello, Vken. Yeah, Tora Kitty Cat is here. Yeah, I got the internet working. I had to use the connection on my cell phone. Yeah, don't jinx it, Vken. Don't worry. It's been an hour and a half, so even if I lose the connection, there isn't a huge loss. Um, wow. Whenever I get these cookies, I remember the time when my teenage granddaughter broke into my house while I was not at home and ate the Girl Scout cookies. Well, I couldn't buy any more for another year because they sell them only once a year. But she had not eaten the lemonade cookies. I buy one every year now. She had not eaten them, so I wasn't sure whether they were any good. I had simply bought a box of those because it was a brand new variety, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a try and see if I like it. Oh, they are awesome. They're kind of strange. Cookie and frosting. No second cookie. But the frosting is firm enough that it does not smear off on your hands or anything like that. And they taste awesome. Awesome possum. Maybe next week I'll remember to hook up the webcam to the desktop computer, which is behind me, and get that going for my podcast. I've had various glitches in setting it up because, of course, every time I go online with the desktop, it wants to upgrade this software, that software, the other software. And I end up sitting there waiting, tapping my foot, yawning, smoking. It's like, come on. Yeah, spring seems to be here early too, Vken, in California. But we got winter last October. Winter came in early, very early. My lilies and irises are growing new leaves, and I'm hoping for lots of flowers. It's time to plant tomatoes. I'll plant them indoors so they don't get any frost. Frost will kill them. My onions are growing well, but my potatoes didn't take. It's funny, odd. One year, I had a dog that just liked to carry around a potato in her mouth. And one time, she actually dug a little hole and planted her potato, and it grew. I miss my doggies. Molly was my son's dog, a black Labrador, 1/4 German Shepherd, really nice dog, the best dog. And then Bandit, mostly Rottweiler, but part traveling salesman. He was my dog. And I miss him even more. Yeah, you plant your seeds in a pot, or you take the tray that your eggs come in, little bit of dirt, poke in a seed, water it. And when the local nursery finally gets plants in, I buy the 6-inch tomato plants already going. And when I plant them outdoors, I plant seeds between them so that I have 2 crops, the early crop and then a later tomato crop. And people love it when I can give them the overproduction of tomatoes. And some friends who come by, and they have permission, they pick the little cherry tomatoes right off the plant and eat them right there. I also have great hopes for my blackberry vines. Last year they didn't do well, didn't get many berries. But that wasn't just my blackberries, it was everybody's blackberries on the mountain. They were taking it the year off, I guess. So maybe I'll actually fertilize them this year. I rarely fertilize the blackberry vines because they're wild. They grow like weeds. I have, by the way, indoors a lavender plant and a basil plant. They would not have survived the winter outside, but they're doing okay now indoors. I'll probably plant the lavender outside and keep the basil inside. I had one basil plant that lasted over 3 years. What they do is they forgot the word for it. They shoot out a sideways branch and they go to seed. Bolt, B-O-L-T, they bolt. So every time it started to do that, I snipped that little branch so it wouldn't bolt and go to seed and die. Down the hill where they don't get such cold winters, they grow basil outside. So I might try that this year just to see if it'll survive. Yeah, my health is a little better, Viken. I'm not completely well, but I'm better. I got out of the clinic system and went to a real doctor. I'll be seeing him again tomorrow morning. And we'll see. The thing is, I was supposed to fast for 12 hours for the blood draw. Fasting blood tests, I couldn't do it. I ate some potato chips. I had to. I felt faint and weak, and my stomach hurt so bad, I had to give it some food. Hand lotion. I truly suffer from dry skin. And the humidity up here isn't very good. But I've got the vaporizers, or humidifiers, I should say, going in the house. Well, one's a steam vaporizer, the other is a cold water humidifier. One at that end of the room and one at that end of the room. And it's a small room, so I at least get some humidity in here. I'm going to have to go out and rake more oak leaves, and the cats will want to go out and play now that the weather's nice. So far, they've been coming in before dark. We'll see if that continues. Oh, and a few days ago, they both came in early, and they were peeking out the door, the open door. So I found out on Facebook that there were a couple big dogs running loose around here. So I shut the door and they just stayed in. The neighbor has a sweet old pit bull mix. I don't know what the thing is about pit bulls that people think they're a dangerous breed. The only dog that ever terrified me was a Chihuahua. It was a vicious little thing. Only dog that ever bit me was my aunt's Afghan hound. He nipped my butt, came up behind me and went nip. Didn't draw blood or anything. He just kind of nipped my pants. In England, that means something else. My slacks. But he had been abused and had problems. And never did it again. But they named this dog Worm. He's a nice doggy. What they say is scary about pit bulls is that they can be sweet for years and suddenly turn. Yeah, they can do more damage than other dogs. Yes, I know that, Deacon, and if I'm at the dinner table, I will not ask for a napkin, I'll ask for a serviette. A napkin is a diaper in England. Yeah, poor Worm. He's a nice doggy. Well, before pit bulls, the demon of dogdom was the Doberman Pinscher. Skinny, pointy noses, little tiny brains. And then it was the Rottweiler. Same markings as a Doberman, a black dog with 2 brown eyebrows and some brown belly and so forth, brown legs. Well, my bandit was mostly Rottweiler, and he was a sweetie to the day he died. Yeah, it isn't in the past at Sequentia. They still use pit bulls as fighting dogs. The English Bull Terriers have a bad rap? Huh. You mean Winston Churchill had a bad dog? Didn't he have a Bull Terrier? Oh no, they called him a Bull Terrier. I think his dog was a poodle or something. Poodles are frightening. The standard poodles, the big ones. He had a bulldog, huh? All right. Let me see. I could have sworn he had a poodle. Let me see. Winston Churchill's dog. Yeah. Oh, it's not a poodle. It's, well, maybe it is. Yeah. Winston Churchill's beloved poodle, Rufus. Oswald is back. Now we're talking about dogs. The dog we had when I was a child, we named him King. His mother's name was Princess. We used to call him Stupid until we had another dog. And then we realized how smart King was. Although I kind of always knew he was smart. He was kind of a terrier mix. His mother looked like a collie dog, but he didn't. He was a white dog with a black spot on his side and black markings on his head, and a black ring around the base of his tail. Yes, Deacon, I made that mistake about Churchill and the Bulldog recently myself and got soundly trounced and corrected. That's how I learned that he had a poodle. But there was a famous bulldog that took cigarettes to the troops in Europe. I forgot his name, but he got a really high honor from the Queen. Or if it was World War I, it was from the King. I forget which war it was. The dog got the equivalent of our Congressional Medal of Honor. I like dogs. One time, when I was younger, I was a teenager, I was walking through the wrong part of town in Santa Ana on my way home from a job interview. Yes, in both world wars, troops were supplied with cigarettes. They'd put a little backpack on the dog and fill the pockets with packs of cigarettes for the troops. Well, anyway, I'm walking through the wrong part of town. The sun's starting to go down, and I'm worried. I got to get home because I know it's the wrong part of town. Suddenly, this German shepherd dog shoots out from his yard, from the back yard, straight at me. I'm going, oh my God. He grabs my arm. Doesn't bite me, just grabs it in his jaws and walks me across the street. I didn't argue with him. And once I was across the street from his house, he let go and went back home. Thank God that dog was well trained. We are in World War III. Actually, we're still in World War II. We simply moved the battlefield. After Germany and Japan were defeated, we moved to Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, North Africa, South America. Eastern Europe. The Cold War with the Soviet Union was not completely cold. We had the Berlin airlift we split the city in half. The Allies got West Berlin and the Soviet Union got East Berlin, but the whole city was inside East Germany with just one highway leading to the city. So the Soviets shut down the highway to starve out the people of West Berlin and force them to join the Soviet Union. So President Kennedy had the Air Force pilots drop crates of supplies with parachutes over the city. And if even one of them had been shot down by the Russians, the Soviets, that would have been a real shooting war. Anyway, they finally gave up and let us keep West Berlin. They were ticked off because people on the Soviet side of Germany kept defecting through Berlin and coming to the West. So they built the Berlin Wall. Yeah, I'm not rooting for anyone in this war. Well, some of the Nazis were Jewish, ethnic Jews. Doesn't mean they were believers. Hitler's grandmother was Jewish, and some of his top ranking officials were ethnic Jews. Well, there's stuff coming out about Ukraine that's troubling, but, you know, yes, Putin is evil. Putin is bombing civilians. Ukraine is an independent country. It has its own corruption, but it isn't threatening the world with nuclear holocaust. But I see this as a prelude to China invading Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is not Chinese. The people are not Chinese. They're native islanders and Japanese. So China has no right claiming that it's part of their nation. It isn't, never was. Yeah, and by the way, the Soviet Union killed more Jews than Hitler did, but they were our allies, so we didn't fuss about it. There's evil right here in the halls of power and wealth. Yeah, when Americans think of Jews, what they picture in their minds is Eastern Europeans, because so many Eastern Europeans fled both the Nazis and the Soviets and came to the United States. Pfizer document. At this point, the death rate for COVID is lower than the death rate from the seasonal flu. It has become that mild. It's still a nasty disease. And I'm not anti vax. I get my tetanus shot regularly, the booster. Tetanus is a horrible disease. Um, when it's been long enough since I had the measles, I'll get the measles shot. But I'm not taking any kind of flu shot. I don't get the flu. Yeah, Pfizer wanted to spread out the release of their documents over 75 years, but the judge said, no, you're going to do it in 3 months. We'll see. But some documents have been released, but as some senators have pointed out in video clips, some of the pages are entirely blacked out. Okay. Yeah, I think as Sequentia is talking about Ukraine, Ukraine was the breadbasket that fed Europe, and Stalin deliberately starved the farmers, took the crops that had been harvested, and then killed the crops in the field because the Ukrainians were rebellious. I don't know. Maybe I've said enough for YouTube to say, oh, you did it again. Zap! About a month ago, something like that, they took down one of my videos for misinformation or something. They didn't specify what I had said, but if I do it again, they'll zap me. My water's empty. I'll be right back. Come on. Come on, Meg. My leg went to sleep. Dum de dum. Dum de dum de dum. Dum de dum. Dum de dum de dum. Yeah, so how did our war in Afghanistan work out? Oh, and our, not embassy, our consulate in Iraq has been shelled with ballistic missiles. Um, how did that work out? And yet we've got warmongers on both sides of the aisle, in our Congress, in our states. They want us to go to war. Why? So we can win and then turn around and surrender? How did it work out in Vietnam and Korea? For that matter, how did World War II turn out? In a sense, it was good versus evil, but it was more like evil versus lesser evil. Putin wants to build up the Russian Empire like the glory days under the Tsars. The English hold on with claws to the old empire with their commonwealths. And okay, they aren't colonies anymore, but really they are. They're following the pattern of Rome, as did Charlemagne of France and what's Ferdinand of Spain and the English monarchs. They're all following the pattern of the Roman Empire. And scholars mourn the fall of Rome. Why? Sure, they built roads and bathhouses and they did reduce crime. But at what cost? the cost of murdering the leaders and the scholars of the ancient world, of imposing their own religion on people who had their own beliefs, imposing their own sense of order on people who were basically nomadic. No, you can't travel around it like a gypsy. You've got to build a house out of stone and stay there for generation after generation. What's so great about their culture? Ice Age farmer. Huh. Now, Rome kind of fell apart. Did Phil ever read the Russian cosmists? I don't know what that is, but he read all kinds of stuff. Whatever he could get his hands on. Um, Rome was evil. They demanded that the conquered tribes give one son from each family to the Roman legion to be a soldier to conquer more people. Hi, Morgan. It's been 2 hours and I'm kind of winding down. Cosmism, Oswald says, was basically a philosophical and cultural literary movement that predated science fiction in Russia. Okay, Phil was no doubt aware of that. I wasn't, but uh, it's more likely that he read about them than that he read their actual work, especially since English translations would have been rare and hard to find, hard to get your hands on, but also because Phil was in the habit of reading reviews and summaries and things of that nature about both books and movies, a sort of time-saving device. Yes, Isaac Asimov's Foundation series is modeled on the Roman Empire. And he didn't have a very high opinion of the emperor, did he? I remember specifically the mule. The Roman bigwigs, just like royals today, were highly inbred. They didn't want to mix with the unwashed masses. It was perfectly acceptable to marry your sister or your mother. Um, Definitely your cousin. Hi, Morgan. Hi, Witta. Et Sequentia, Oswald. And Viken. I've got a full room here. There's only one book I still need to send off, and that's to V, who finally sent me the shipping address. Once I get that done, I'll see if I have more books to give away. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I'm still waiting to hear about the Spanish translation of my novel, The Darkening of the Light. If things go well, they'll pay for me to visit Spain. Phil, what Phil read mostly in the actual original and not reviews was philosophers and the church fathers, religious writing. He didn't even read Dune. He made me read it. El Oscurando de Luz. Yes, Oswald. The darkening of the light. I forget at which point it comes in, but at one point in the book it says, and the light began to darken. Fascinated by Mallorca, Morgan? Why? Our world is so messed up. It's just not a good time, but you know what? My parents were talking about these same issues in the 1960s, and my grandparents were talking about it when Franklin Roosevelt was president, and we were in World War II and the end of the Depression and all that stuff. Dreamt you went there. That's cool, Morgan. I keep having dreams that are just pedestrian, like I'm at the office doing some work, usually filing things. I want to dream that I'm at an amazing restaurant where all kinds of different tasty things are laid and I can choose. I do like sushi, but there are other things. I did order from the Schwann's truck this week. They accept food stamps now. Um, little, oh, come on, what's the word? Oh, well, they're like pastry pillows filled with spinach and cheese, ravioli. They're meatless, they're just cheese and spinach. I wasn't clear on whether they came with a sauce. I think not. I think I get to choose what kind of sauce to put on them. You dreamed you saw the rapture. Well, from what I've gathered from scholars who are smarter and more informed than I am, the rapture is not Jesus dragging you up to heaven. You meet him in the sky as his army against evil. And yeah, we'll go to heaven, but we won't stay there. As God said to us, behold, I am making a new heaven and a new earth. And in the book of Revelation, heaven comes down to earth in the form of the temple at Jerusalem. So we'll be on a new earth that isn't so screwed up. Oh well, that's my opinion. But it's based on scholarship by people who know what they're doing. I am so worried about the future. I'm not terribly worried about atomic bombs or nuclear missiles. I'm worried about what will happen to our society if the grid goes down. Here in the mountains, we were used to frequent power outages, but as Edison Company improves their infrastructure, they're becoming more rare. But even so, a power outage here is just an annoyance. But recently, the internet went down for 3 days and people were going nuts. Our cell phones didn't work either. Landlines worked, but not if you got your landline from the cable company, because the cable was down too. Yeah, Deacon is referring to Dr. Blood Money, I believe, Phil's novel. Dr. Blood Money, or How We Got Along After the Bomb. Well, you know what the missiles would hit. Mostly military targets, but also power plants, maybe some political targets. And we have a pretty darn good defense system, but I doubt we could get all of the missiles. And even so, you explode them in the air, the radiation is going to be everywhere. Bad news. But people survived Chernobyl and Fukushima, and we would survive that. I'm more concerned about all the crime that happens when there's no light. And the anxiety and panic that happens when there's no communication. We had no internet and no television. Of course, I choose not to have television anyway. For 3 days, and people were really having major anxiety attacks. I read a book. Our power was still on, so I could keep all the devices charged, but I couldn't make a phone call. I couldn't go on the internet. I could play solitaire on the tablet. That's all I do on it anyway, except keep it as a backup for an internet connection. But what's going to happen if it's down for a year or longer? That could be a real problem. But don't expect troops to land on our shores. They know better. It'll be our own troops to restore order and round us up into camps. Like during the flooding from Katrina in New Orleans, people went to the evacuation center and the assholes wouldn't let them leave until the authorities arranged for buses to take them to Texas. People who had family outside the door saying, "Hey, I live in Ohio. There's no flooding there. Let me take my loved ones." Nope, we can't let them leave. The toilets backed up. There were rapes and murders and all kinds of crime going on. But no, you can't leave. It's against the rules. Well, in my community, fortunately, most of us know each other. Even if we don't know their names, we see them at the post office and the grocery store, and we help each other. I wonder how long that will last in a real crisis, but it'll last longer than some big city where you don't even know the guy who lives in the apartment next door. Where there's no place to plant a garden, everything's paved over, and you live in little boxes that you lock up tight because you're scared of someone coming in and stealing your stuff or harming you, or both. I haven't locked my door of my house in 10 years. The only burglary I ever had was my granddaughter coming in and eating all the cookies. She's almost 30 now, so she doesn't do that anymore. Wow, it's been 2 hours and 20 minutes, and I'm really winding down, and I want my Girl Scout cookie. So, you guys, let's see. Thank you all for listening, and have a great day. And I'll catch you next week, if not sooner. Come on, mouse, move, mouse.